Okay, so sometimes I share things with you that are really not worked out. This is really not worked out, but I want your help figuring it out because it bothers me. It bothered me as I was listening to torah yesterday at Mincha, and then Balkare happened to be a friend of mine who was having lunch by me, and we talked about it on the way back. We have nothing. I looked through all of the Farshim, and I have very little on it, but you'll have to help me, okay? So, Parshat Emor, we start, in the opening psukim, we have the Isurim of Kahuna, the different Isurim of Kahuna, of Tumah, but one of them is, one set of Isurim, rather, on Kohanim, are the prohibitions regarding marriage, okay? So, Perek Chaval Pasuk Zayin, you get, Isha Zonah v'chalala lo yikachu, v'isha Gerusha me'isha lo yikachu, ki kadoshu le'elohav. Right? Oh, a woman who's a zonah, however we define that, halachically it's someone who's slept with someone who is forbidden to her. We reject the more machmir positions in Chazal. A chalala, which we understand to be someone who's the product of a union forbidden to Kohanim. So a Kohen can't marry them. And then you get Isha Gerusha me'isha lo yikachu. What does that literally mean?
A woman has been divorced.
No, not literally. I said literally.
What was it?
Isha Gerusha me'isha.
Oh, a woman who was divorced from her husband.
From her husband, right? Okay, good. Now, right, a woman who was Gerusha from her husband. Now, this is a problem, right? And I never noticed it until yesterday, but there's something very odd about that. What's weird about that? There's a lot of things weird with it. I don't know what to do with it. Okay, well, one is going to be Gerusha me'isha. Okay, well, let's start it this way. Why is it that most people, I think, when they hear this pasuk, it doesn't sound weird?
Because we've been I don't know, our society that just go on and don't do.
No, I don't mean the halacha. Why is the halacha weird? I mean the pasuk. I mean not the halacha. I'm not asking about whether the halacha makes sense. Why does the pasuk not sound weird to the average person? But it really is very weird.
Because we have a lot of weird things and with weird formats and things.
So you don't even realize why it's weird, right? It's because we call divorce gerushin. So when it says Isha Gerusha me'isha, we know exactly what that means. Right, that's very nice. Except, in the classic case of, in the parsha from which we learn the laws of divorce, how many times does any variant of the word gimel resh shin come up? Never, right? Dvarim Perek Chav Daled, ki kach ish isha uve'ala, vayam lo timtachen ve'inav ki matzah ba'ervat davar v'chatav la sefer kritut v'natan biyadah v'shilchach mibeito. Right? If someone marries someone and she doesn't find favor in his eyes, and he finds ervat davar, right, something wrong with her, so he writes a sefer kritut, right, a writ of severing. Okay, so what we call a get, the Torah calls sefer kritut, and what does the Torah call gerushin? Shilcha mi beito. She was sent out from his house. Right? etc.
Also, the mission of the first constitution. It doesn't say you see Haisha Nishna, and then puts herself into. I mean, it doesn't say and you acquire and then you gave.
Right. So obviously, by the time you get to rabbinic period, gerushin is like a colloquial for divorce, but it's really strange, maybe just to me, but the only time in Torah that gerushin is used to describe divorce is here. And it's not usually gerushin is used, the shoresh gimel reshin is used to describe. What is it? Where else does the shoresh gimel reshin appears in the Torah, but where does it appear in the Torah?
I'm looking.
Right? Let's see if you remember where it appears, because it does not, right?
Oh, wait, sure, Gerusha. Why does that sound familiar? Am I making that up?
It appears. Where does it appear?
Well, feel like you're flipping to the beginning.
Okay. It does. One of the places it appears is the very beginning of the Torah, where?
God garashed them
from Gan Eden. Vayigaresh et Adam, vayashken mikedem leGan Eden. Right? Where else does Gimel Reshin appear?
Oh, hold on. I made that up. Totally made that up. I have no idea.
Does it? I'm trying to think. Does it? Where does it appear a lot? I'm going to look at the Hagar thing.
I'm looking.
Where does it appear a lot? You're looking at the concordance?
Concordance, yeah.
Or concordancia in Hebrew, yes.
Concordancia. It's a really cool search engine.
Yes. Right, so it appears several times in the context of, let's see, does it appear there? Yeah, you're right. Gerusha Amahazad Vet Bina. Yes. Where else does it appear? Oh, good, right? Meaning many times in the beginning, Kayin is driven off the face of the earth, right? It appears in the context of driving out the nations in the land of it. It means you're driven out, right? And that's what it means, right? Every time, that's what it means, right? That's what the word means, right? L'garesh is to drive someone out, to drive Adam out of Gan Eden, to drive Kayin out wherever he is going, to drive Hagar and Yishmael, to drive the people, the nations out of. So, right, that's what it means, right? Yeah, I mean. Yeah, meaning that's what it means, right? Kicked out of the land, whether it's the Jews, whether it's the nation. That's what the word means. As being used for divorce, you would think it would be in the way we use it as the colloquial divorce. You would think it would appear in Dvarim Chav Daled when we talk about divorce, but it doesn't, right? And it appears twice in this parak, right? Here and in the case of the Kohen Gadol, and even there it's in two different ways. Because here, it says Chaim notes, Gerusha is not a status. It's not a chalois shame. She's not a divorcee. It's Gerusha me'isha, someone who was driven out by her husband, right? Meaning it's descriptive, right? The person who was driven out, the woman who was driven out by her husband, can't be married to a Kohen. And then you get Gerusha without me'isha in the case of Kohen Gadol, just a few psukim later, right? Where you get Almana ugrusha v'chalala zonat ela lo yikach. Right, so there suddenly you have grusha without me'isha. Is it referencing back into shorthand? I don't really know, right? So why? Yeah, good. Because I have one idea, but I'm not at all convinced by it. So what do you think? Okay.
As far as Gerusha me'isha would be, it doesn't really make sense actually, but like the only thing that makes sense of is that like me'isha and not from like some other reason of like what's it called? Doesn't divorce his wife and then they force him to. Like, but it doesn't make sense because we don't see anywhere that like.
Right, so we don't distinguish that. Look, so obviously Chazal have a whole series of drashot here on the word me'isha, right? Things like, even if the woman is only Gerusha me'isha, it does her. So even if a husband didn't do a real divorce, right? He did a divorce that shouldn't work, right? So she should be not, right? Like, he only divorced her from him, which doesn't work, right? Because there has to be real kvetut.
They both have to be like both.
Right. Meaning he says you're divorced from me, but you can't marry anybody else or something like that. So Chazal paskin that woman, even though she's not really divorced, she can never marry a Kohen. Right, because she's afilu isha, right, who's only grusha me'isha, right? Again, that's probably an asmachta, right? But there are many drusha on the isha part here, right? In Chazal, but what Chazal don't address at all is the use of the word grusha, right? They just sort of, right. So I don't know if I have anything on it, honestly. I looked at all the Mefarshim last night. Most of them, if they address it at all, it's in the context of those series of drashot about Gerusha me'isha. The only one shot I saw, which wasn't even addressing this word, was just addressing the concept. Maybe it fits here. Maybe is the Ralbag. Right? The Ralbag says that why is it that a Kohen can't marry a divorcee. So Ralbag says, since the classic case of Gerushin, at least, and according to Beit Shammai, the only case of Gerushin is, as it describes in Dvarim Chav Daled, ki matzah ba erdvat davar, right? That the husband divorced her because she was involved in some sort of promiscuity, right? In some sort of, right, whether it be actual adultery or some attenuated form, as outlined in Ketubot. So that means that the type of people who get divorced are not the right people to marry, the spiritual leaders and elite, right? So if that's the case, so maybe you could argue that the reason it doesn't use the word shilcha is because at least in principle, the issue here isn't the fact that she was once married, right? That's true for the Kohen Gadol, who can't even marry an almanah, where the issue is that she was once married. Right? And he has to marry, it's an active, ki im betulah me'am abi kach isha. But here it's more like, I mean, it's paired with a zonah. Right? A zonah is someone who's clearly been involved in inappropriate things, and a Gerusha me'isha, like that strong language, the type of person that, like, it's not that it just didn't work out, right? Like the husband had to drive her out of the house because she was, not a good person. That type of person, the Kohen shouldn't embrace, right? And therefore, in this context, you sort of pick strong, maybe even charged language to explain the rationale, right? That it's not simply that she had once been married. It says that we make a categorical rule because often the one who's divorced, and according to Beit Shammai only, the reason of divorce is because, right, and since often in Torah, as we mentioned, you have ligaresh in the context where people are driven out because of sin, right? Because there's something really wrong, right? Adam from Gan Eden, Cain, right? Hagar and Yishmael, right? The nations of the land, right? That often, if not always, there's a charged moral implication there, right? That someone did something to be deserving of being chased out, right? That's really why the category of a divorcee is anathema to the Kohen, because it often carries that with it, right?
Explain why the Kohen Gadol didn't say Michelle, because again, it has to do with the fact that she was married.
Right, maybe you're right, Chaim, right? And maybe that once you use the words, you continue to use it, but that's not the main point by the Kohen Gadol, right? By the Kohen, it's Gerusha me'isha, like there was a husband who drove her out, right? Rather than, like, the same category applies to Kohen Gadol, but that's more because, right, she was simply married to someone else, right? The fact that someone drove her out is less relevant because it goes with almanah. It's paired with almanah, not with zonah, right? That maybe, right? Maybe that's the difference between Gerusha me'isha, right, and Gerusha, right? That by Kohen, it's because of what Gerusha normally carries with it in terms of having done something that's deserving thrown out, as opposed to by Kohen Gadol, meaning it's the same category, but not really for the same reason, right? It's more just paired with almanah, right? Maybe. That's the best I could come up with yesterday, because no one really addresses it. So if you have another shot, right, let me know. Meaning, look, I could be imaginative and come up with different associations, right? We could talk about the fact that the Mishkan and the Mikdash are, in many Midrashic sources, a return to Gan Eden, right? And leaving Gan Eden is captured by the word Gerusha, right? So maybe the Kohen has to be an being driven out of Gan Eden. I mean, we could get really midrashic here. I came up with that now, and that's sometimes how midrash happens, right? Oh, well, there's a word association. Right? I mean, it could be. I have no idea. Like, I don't know. I don't have a good explanation. I think it's odd. I think it's worth noting, right? I think it's worth noting, if for no other reason, that this becomes the chosen term in the colloquial in Hebrew to describe divorce. Right, Gerushin and a Gerusha, right? Even though, strikingly, it is not the word used in the actual parsha of Gerushin, right? That's Sefer Klitut and Shiluchin.
What do you call the parsha of Gerushin?
Right, that's what I'm saying, right? The parsha that we would, right, if you say, where's the parsha of Gerushin, right, everyone who, right, if they knew where it was, but they would refer to Dvarim Chav Daled, which is where we learn about divorce, right? But the fact that it only comes up in the case of the Kohen, and yes, it only comes up as Gerusha me'isha the first time, and then Gerusha, at least should make you wonder. This is all I've got, right, so far. If you come up with something, tell me tomorrow. Like I said, I wanted to more outline the problem that I have. I think it deserves attention, but I just couldn't find anything. I didn't do like I looked at all of the first time I could find on the pasuk. Right, really, what I have to do is just a search through all of Bar Ilan, but I don't know how that would be like endless, right? Isha, Gerusha, Meisha, and that figure out like every phrase that comes up. It's mostly been halachic rather than an addressing of the phrasing in the pasuk. Okay, that's what I got. If you think of something, please do let me know. That includes anyone who happens to listen to this on recording. If you think of something, please let me know because I'm a bit puzzled by it still.